Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily for January 31st, 2025. Coming up, we've got the All-Star Reserve announcements, which means we've got snubs. Hey, it worked. Look at that. Let's go. We've also got Kyle Neubeck on the Sixers and Kelly Eco on the Rockets. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Es. I can't believe we pulled that off.
Hey, chemistry right there. There you go.
That's it. Hey, guys, we got the All-Star Reserve. We actually have a huge show. Kyle Neubeck from PHLY Sports. We're talking Sixers, maybe trade options, talking about Joel Embiid, when he might be back. So stick around for that. And then we got Kelly Eco on the crazy finish with Rockets Grizzlies and what the Rockets might do at the deadline. But Es, we got to start with the All-Star Reserves.
The snubs.
Eastern Conference Reserves. I'll just run through the list real quick. Damian Lillard, Darius Garland, Jaylen Brown, Cade Cunningham, Tyler Hero, Evan Mobley, Pascal Siakam. And I think if you're just saying, you know, who got snubbed, who's missing is really what it is. It's not, I don't want to do the whole, take this guy off. You know, we're not haters here. But if I'm saying who's missing, it's got to be Trae Young, right?
Yeah, I think it is. The Hawks are still in playoff position. I know they've been struggling recently, but Trae is leading the league in assists. It always seems like coaches are the ones who discredit Trae, which is an interesting thing. And I know he took to social media to talk about that earlier today, too. So he kind of feels slighted with what's going on. But I agree with you. Trae is the guy that jumps out to me. I know people will talk about LaMelo Ball as a potential option just because he's putting up the numbers and led the fan voting for guards in the East.
Is there a conspiracy against LaMelo Ball?
I don't think there's a conspiracy. No, I don't think there's a conspiracy at all. I think it's just the Hornets are 12-32. They're second worst in the Eastern Conference. And so it's tough to get a guy like that.
He's got the stink on him. And also the numbers. Look, he's having like this experimental season. It's not a good season. Yeah. It's not a bad season, but it's kind of an insane. It's fun. Yeah, it's great. And he's putting up some impressive numbers and doing some crazy things. I love to watch him play, but no, come on.
I think I would rather have Trae over LaMelo for whatever All-Star stuff. But
Well, what about the West?
Okay, the Western Conference, also some snubs here, but we got Anthony Edwards on there, Anthony Davis, James Harden, Jaren Jackson Jr., Alperen Sengun becoming his first-time All-Star, Jalen Williams becoming an All-Star as well, and then Victor Wembanyama, of course. Snub-wise, the guy I'm thinking about, Domantas Sabonis, Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, and I feel like with Sabonis, he's a little bit of victim of the Kings' lack of success. I mean, I would point to Alperen Sengun maybe getting a boost for the Rockets' success, and the Rockets have been, we're going to talk to Kelly later about them, right? Like seems like they're on national TV a lot right now, and maybe that added attention. But Sabonis leads the league in reboundings. He's second in 3-point percentage, which seems crazy. Yeah. I mean, this guy is a double machine. He's a monster, and look. They have been pretty good since Doug Christie took over as head coach. I mean, they kind of turned the season around, and Sabonis has been a big reason for that. So, there's even a narrative reason for him to have gotten in. I think he's probably, if I was splitting hairs between Sabonis and Trae, I almost say, the gap between the person you have to get rid of in the West to Sabonis
is bigger.
It's like Sabonis is maybe a greater snub than Trae Young. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Sabonis is the greatest snub of all time. How about that? Let's lean into
I don't know. I mean, biggest snub this year for sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, he even was a snub last year, which I think he didn't make the team. And so I don't know what it is necessarily with his game, but I think it's a lot of fun watching Sabonis. I think he's like a beautiful playmaker who can make tons of passes, which is really cool. I love when bigs can make plays. He's an all-star in my books. Yeah. You know what? The other conversation, maybe they should expand the all-star teams. How do you feel about that?
That's an interesting thought. Well, now with this new tournament format, and we'll see if this sticks beyond this year, you could see an argument to do that. And frankly, they could just do an all-day tournament. I mean, let's make everyone an all-star.
Why not?
15 all-stars per side feels a bit much, honestly. For a game that most guys don't even really play hard in, I think 12 is plenty. It's an honor to be there. And,
it is true.
If you make it, you don't. And if you don't, hey, it's not that big of a deal. Life goes on. Guys, we're going to bring in Kyle to talk about the Sixers and their season I don't know. It's a cursed season.
Crazy. Season from hell, unfortunately. Yeah.
The Philadelphia 76ers are having the season from hell. I think that's pretty much the only way you can describe it. Came into the year and they seemed to be one of the favorites in the East. You know, they get Paul George. They put all these role players around Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey set to have a breakout season. Didn't even know how good Jared McCain was going to be. And then everything has gone wrong, including like losing Jared McCain for the season. Paul George now has a pinky issue. Joel Embiid is, I don't know when he's coming back. So we had to get our buddy from PHLY Sports, Kyle Neubeck, who covers the Sixers, to break down everything for us. Kyle, how's it going? How's the season been?
It's been exactly what you would expect. It's been a lot of pain, suffering, chaos. And I think probably the main word is uncertainty, right? And I think that's probably been the toughest thing for those guys to deal with. And so it's been the toughest thing for us on the media side to deal with, is it's like, I wake up every day and I don't know who's playing. I don't know what's going to happen. And you just kind of let the chips fall where they may.
What do you think has been the hardest part about this season? Because as Dave just mentioned, there's been a lot of components of like bad luck or bad timing or injuries or whatnot. What do you think has been the part that's really made it feel uncertain?
So I think it's mainly, if you had sat down preseason, training camp, whatever, and said, this is every possible thing that could go wrong for the Sixers, I think you've probably gotten, for the guys on this roster, like 10 or 11 out of the 15 worst case scenarios. So like Joel has been the most not healthy he's been in a long time, right? He missed half the year last year and he looked like Iron Man in that year compared to this season so far. Paul George has battled multiple injuries. Caleb Martin has been in and out of the lineup all year. Kelly Oubre's had a pretty good season, but he's, at least for the, two-way play, but has shot the ball poorly for long stretches. Maxey's been incredible lately, but had a really slow start to the year shooting wise. And so you just go on and on. You already brought up Jared McCain tore the meniscus. He was one of the few bright spots on the team. Yeah. And so it has been one of those years where it just feels like whenever they turn a corner, whenever they get one guy back, whenever they get two guys back, three guys then go back to the injury report. They can't keep a backup center healthy. They're playing Kyle Lowry and Reggie Jackson backcourt minutes together. And frankly, those have actually worked, which has been a big surprise for me. The splits say, hey, this is a combo you might want to play a little bit more often. It led to their win last night.
Well, that's a problem,
Sacramento.
Right?
Like it's a big problem.
Yeah.
But I know you guys have respect for Kyle Lowry and to a lesser extent Reggie for their careers, but Kyle Lowry at 38, 39 years old is just not somebody you want to be relying on as an every night and pretty big contributor. So he had to play. This is probably a snapshot of the season. He played 17 straight minutes to end their game against Sacramento. Kyle Lowry has gone many games this year where he didn't play 17 total minutes. Right. It's just crazy.
Wow.
But I will say this. Look, these guys are still playing really hard, even in spite of the injuries and the lack of success. But, we have been discussing it for weeks. Should they tank? They seemingly are not going to tank. Is that the right call? Like, do you think that they should have just pulled the plug on the season, try to salvage, the draft pick and get through it without, suffering further injury to some of these guys who seem to be, so prone to it?
I think the tough thing with making an argument for tanking, and there are a lot of merits to it, right? Especially the protections they have on their pick this year. They run a big risk of OKC just taking their draft pick in a really good class and that taking a potential high upside player off the board for them. The tricky part is that you have to sell it to Joel Embiid first, right? Like all this starts with, you would have to rule out Joel for the season. And I think there are some people on the outside who think this is a scenario where if you rule out Joel and you say, hey, you're not playing the rest of this year, you come back training camp next year, you get off to a fresh start, it'll help the knee. But I don't think the issue he's dealing with is like he's got to get surgery, or this is one where he takes 6 months off and it materially improves the knee. This is for the rest of his career, a management issue. He's going to have problems like sort of similar to what we saw with Dwayne Wade, right? Like Dwayne Wade, after a certain amount of time, the knee would swell up and he'd have to manage it. Or, Chris Paul has played without a meniscus in one of his knees for a long, long time. And transparently, he's probably a little more serious about the day-to-day care of everything because
he's also
Chris
a much
Paul
smaller guy too, man.
Yeah,
let's not forget that Joel Embiid is a massive human being.
100 pounds difference. Also, yeah.
So it's not serving Joel, or at least Joel's knee, to say we're giving you the rest of the season off. Mm-hmm. This is it's pain management, it's swelling management, it's all kinds of different things, and he has tried to put himself in position he's lost a lot of weight, like he's slimming down. He's trying to put less stress on all that. But that's the main reason that I don't think you can throw in the towel. It's like, this guy is going to have to deal with this problem the rest of his career. He is he's still the straw that stirs the drink for this team. Yeah. And Maxi's recent play is like, look, unless you shut him down, and there are no health or any other issues that, at least right now, knock on wood, you can point to with him and say, we need to shut him down for this or make up a fake injury. And so I don't see how you can, unless you bring back Joel again and he's unable to give it a go. I think if he comes back again and it's like he can't get through 3 games without going back on the injury report, then you say, maybe we just scrap it. But until then, I think they're still committed to trying to win this year.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the competitiveness of this year, because I think signing Paul George was part of the process of expecting Embiid to miss games. And so you had another star there to kind of keep things afloat with Maxey throughout the season as Embiid would miss time. But George is also a guy who's been pretty hurt recently. Yeah. And the pinky issue is another thing, but he's had an up and down season. He was starting to play better in January before getting hurt here. Has it been, I mean, it obviously has been frustrating, but do you think this team has what it takes? They're only 2.5 games out of 8 right now, or basically the play-in race. Do you think they have what it takes to make that sort of run in April? Let's say when Embiid gets healthy and George is back and they kind of have all their guys. Are they expecting that? Do you see that being a possibility?
I mean, I think it's a low odds possibility. And I'm a big believer in, I've criticized all year, even before this has been a long Joel stretch of missed games at this point. When they talked about, no back-to-backs and being really conservative with his body, I just don't believe in that type of plan for a team that they basically changed the entire roster in the offseason, right? They only had 3 or 4 returning players. You need to spend that 82 games working on everything, right? The different defensive coverages you want to play, the counters that you have on offense. And Joel is such a huge, all-consuming offensive force, right? So a lot of guys in the league today, they've never played with a real big man, and they've never played with a guy who's like, we're going to operate through the high post or out of the elbows, and he's going to be our main scoring threat. And so that's a thing that takes a lot of time. And so I think the teams that win in the regular season tend to win in the playoffs, right? And so that it's a silly thing to say, like, oh, winning teams win more. But
it's usually how it goes.
The history of the NBA
banking on making a run from the play-in, it's worked for a couple of teams, but you gotta. There's so many things that have to break right, including injuries to the teams that you might run into. Right. Look, obviously, we could talk about the long term, but they're committed to Joel Embiid. Yeah. Paul George is under contract. Tyrese Maxey's young and under contract. I mean, this is probably the core of the team for at least the next couple years, right? I mean, barring a trade this summer or something. But
or what Paul George, Jimmy Butler trade?
I was going to say, what about a trade right now? Is there a chance that this team makes a move to try to improve today? Is there something out there for them where they can improve on the margins? I know that other teams are interested in some of their guys, like Eric Gordon and Yabusele, but is there a move they can make to I don't know, help make up for Joel's absence, which I know is impossible, but is that on the table for them?
I think if they're going to make a move, it's probably one that would have at least a little bit of short-term upside, but you're more focused on, because of where they're at with the salary cap, let's get somebody in who's got room to grow with Maxey and fits alongside everybody else. So an example we've brought up quite a bit is Santi Aldama in Memphis, right? He's a guy that They didn't get the extension agreed to. He'll be a restricted free agent this summer. He's on I want to say he's around like $8 million contract. And they have a bunch of guys, the Sixers, in that range where they could do a 1-for-1 salary type swap and then say, hey, we'll give you a first round pick. And then
and the Grizzlies don't typically like to pay the tax for guys, right? So
yeah. So it's a guy that he's a versatile front court guy. You can play him next to Embiid. You can play him as a center at times. He can help out. Yabu's had to play all these center minutes. Like, that's the type of move. Like, it's not a big swing, right? But it's a guy who is good now and you think can grow into the future. Like that. If they're going to make a buying move, I would keep an eye on some stuff like that. But I still don't know that it's clear that they're going to buy, right? You mentioned Yabu and Eric Gordon. Yabusele is probably the most interesting decision they have at the deadline because they really don't have salary flexibility to bring him back. He's having a great role player season. I think it's going to be a test of, and I hate getting into like the math and the CBA and all that. It's like very boring to talk about, but how is that going to impact the market for middle-class players like Yabusele? I think we saw last summer, a lot of those guys are getting squeezed. There are only so many of those mid-level contracts to go around. So maybe you can end up keeping them and stealing them, but otherwise it probably would behoove them to say, hey, if we can get a few seconds for this guy, that's probably worth it for us as we try to retool moving forward.
Yeah, especially because, you run into a situation where some of these guys, maybe in the offseason, you want to move them. Having those extra seconds to attach gets them off the books pretty easily. Kyle, you guys can find Kyle wherever you listen to podcasts, over on YouTube, PHLY Sports. You guys do live streams after every game, right?
Yes, we do pregame and postgame for every game. We do 5 shows a week. So that if there's 4 games, we'll have one off day show. But we are round the clock Sixers coverage. We got our written stuff as well, where we'll have a lot of stuff with the trade deadline coming up and all the balls in the air for this group.
Yeah, guys do a great job over there. Rich Hoffman, Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. Thank you very much, man. Guys, stick around after the break. S and I are going to catch up with Kelly Iko after Rockets Grizzlies. Man, that was crazy. The Houston Rockets and Memphis Grizzlies played a basketball game last night. The Rockets only play crazy games. They only have crazy finishes.
Yep.
And Kelly Iko, our, roving regional beat reporter who covers Memphis and Houston, somehow has to cover these exhausting games every single night. Kelly, I hope you're okay. I hope you're getting plenty of sleep. What happened with that timeout, man?
It was almost another repeat of a Taylor Jenkins fiasco. And if you go back and watch the footage, the Rockets miss, I think it's like end of the shot clock chance. And we'll get into their late game offense and their flusters. Yeah. Taylor Jenkins is telling those guys to go, 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 go. The official behind him, because Taylor Jenkins is pretty close to him, he's thinking that he's about to call a timeout. And then if you look at the court, half the Rockets just stopped playing because everybody's confused.
Yeah.
The Grizzlies are still going. And Jalen Wills, he gets a wide open dunk. And Taylor Jenkins just lights into this referee. And credit to the officiating crew, because all night from both sides, they were getting to their faces, but the refs kept their calm. I didn't see any checks handed out. Yeah. They were just telling them to calm down, chill out, because they know that this is a high-intensity rivalry. This is the 4th time these guys have seen each other this season. Each game has been pretty competitive. So, the crew allowed those guys to play out for 48 minutes. But I think the biggest takeaway is that Taylor Jenkins, he got saved, because if they would have lost that game,
those free throws,
come in and had to apologize for another timeout, timeout gate.
Yeah,
it would have been
Jaren
crazy.
Jackson. So Jaren Jackson gets the foul call. He hits the 2 free throws. Yeah, and the Grizzlies hold on. But S and I, we're watching this game and we're chatting in our group chat, and we're saying, are they going to do this again? Are they gonna have another chance to maybe like take the lead, win the game, just not run a play? As like, you dug up some numbers on what they've been doing in clutch time. I mean,
by the way, just before we get to the numbers here, if the Grizzlies lost that game, that would have been the first time I think an actual protest would have worked post game. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
I think it would have actually been successful.
Because he never signaled for a timeout. And the ref was saying, like, he was pointing to, like, my bad. Like, if you look at it, I was right there. It was crazy.
That's crazy. Okay, so let's break down this Rockets offense, especially in the fourth quarter. They've been struggling this season. Kelly, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when they played Memphis before. And if you look at the numbers, 18th in clutch offense, 26th in fourth quarter points, 26th in fourth quarter offense, minus 2.9 net rating in the fourth quarter. They lost. They went on a 15-1 run. The Grizzlies did in the fourth quarter of this one. What is it about Houston's offense that makes them stagnate like this in the fourth quarter in clutch situations?
It's a number of things. One, they still don't have the requisite shooting to give them some inside-out balance. You know, when you have guys like Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Fred, who will go to drive into the teeth of the defense and look for kick-out options, they don't have enough shooting to give themselves that balance. Then you look at injury history. They're missing Jabari Smith. Sometimes they try and put either Tari or Jay Sean. They aren't the best shooters. Like, it's easy if you're in opposing defense to game plan for that.
Right.
And then you see, like, they're young. Like, they're still going through, even though they've exceeded expectations up until this point. In the fourth quarter, you still see why there's still a bit of a ways to go development-wise for them to get to that tier 3, however you want to call it, as an offensive unit.
Yeah.
And then tonight, like, they still don't have a hierarchy. Like, I know, like, for tonight, Alpern was out, so that gives them a lot of issues in terms of having that, offensive fulcrum so you can play.
Yeah, missing their all-star, right? Yeah.
And missing their all-star. And then, now you're relying on Jalen, who was kind of gassed into the game. Fred, it was just a weird. And when you go back to the overall offensive set, the offensive scheme, they still call a 1970s style offense. Like, they want to screen and roll sometimes, but it's not modernized, and it's not right. It doesn't always. It's not always conducive to how the game is going, right? And so sometimes you run into trouble.
Kelly, let me ask you, because we've talked about this. Not to cut you off, but it does rely a lot on beat the guy in front of you, even off the ball, right? And that works because they have athletes, but end of games, when you play as hard and with the pace they play, I mean, I mentioned this because they start the fourth quarter and I mean, it's just a full court sprint every single possession. And, they're not committing fouls all that often actually in some of these stretches. So it's not like they get a lot of rest. And I wonder, is some of this running out of gas and not being able to do the things that they're able to do athletically, in the game?
So in a vacuum, a team like Houston is built to run. The reality is they're not the fastest team in the league. They're not even top 10 in pace.
Yeah, Memphis is on the other side, right?
Yeah, Memphis is a top 2, top 3 pace team. You have a difference in ideologies in terms of Fred, he's more methodical. He wants to, dribble the ball. He wants to, get guys in the right spots. You got guys like Amen and Jalen who want to go 150 miles an hour. Alpern is probably more of the Fred mold in terms of, patience. And then it's just like sometimes you see these young teams, they get into these sets. And like you said, Dave, like they want to run, but by the fourth quarter, there's no time to catch your breath. And then you're playing against another team that also has athletes. Yeah. Jalen Wells, underrated athlete. Desmond Bain, underrated athlete. Jaren Jackson Jr., underrated athlete. This is probably the best matchup that you could have for Houston in the Western Conference because the Grizzlies are physical. They're aggressive. They might not be as good. They're still a poor half-court offensive team overall, but they have enough speed to get them through 4 quarters. And even though Ja wasn't playing, they're still pushing the ball. Yeah. And you have floor spacers. You have Santi. You have Kennard, who was great tonight. I think he had, 22 points? 22 points tonight. You have enough shooting to at least sustain you against a team like the Rockets who can't combat you with that 3-point arsenal. So it's really a possession-for-possession game. And even though tonight, they scored 72 points in the paint, it's just rim run after rim run after rim run after rim run, and there is no plan B. Mm-hmm. So your only hope is to see if there's any individual brilliance that you can get from a Fred or a Jalen or an Embiid. And you saw what happened in
Dylan
the fourth
hits
quarter.
10 threes.
Or Dylan, yeah. And you saw what happened in the fourth quarter, the last 2 possessions of the game where they're trying to draw up a play for a man. Memphis can already see it coming a mile away. So they just pack the paint. You have to kick it out to Fred, who's forced to take a step back 3 or step back. It's just not great. It's not good execution. And that's going to cause you issues in April, in May, if you don't have enough firepower, if you don't have enough release valves to find you good to great shots in the fourth quarter.
I think one of the interesting things for me when you mentioned like the release valve, to credit the Rockets, the last couple of weeks, they've won some really, really impressive games.
They've looked great. Yeah.
They've looked great, right? Beating the Cavs twice. They've beat the Celtics. They've, they kind of survived against the Hawks on the second night of a back-to-back. They've won these games despite losing the lead. So to credit them, like they're still getting the job done for the most part. And against the Grizzlies, they're 3-1 this season. Like this was a grinded out win for the Grizz. I guess from the Rockets' perspective, knowing that approaching the trade deadline in just a week, knowing the guys that they have and what they want to stay put with how well they're doing this season, what do you think the Houston Rockets are going to do at the trade deadline?
Spill the beans, Kelly.
Now,
give me the trade.
The consistent word I keep getting from them is that they want to ride this momentum out. They're fine with their team, yada, yada. They don't want to break up what's been cooking.
Right.
The problem with that is because of the age of parity that we live in, who's to say that the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to waltz to the NBA Finals? Like, they're an injury away from this thing being wide open. So if you're the Rockets and you never know what next season will bring, you don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. Fred has a team option. You never know how those negotiations can turn out. You never know what other team in the West is going to come back up. Are the Timberwolves going to finally wake up, or Dallas is going to get things right? This is the best shot you have at having a deep run in the West in years. And it's clear what you need. It's clear as day. Anybody can see what you need.
Yeah.
You need a god shooter. And there are a couple out there. Now, obviously, Cam Johnson is hurt, and that's probably going to set things back a while. But there are things out there that you can do if you're the Rockets. But the issue is, are you willing to actually sacrifice some of your young players and your picks and go make a move? It's a two-sided coin, because you've gone to this juncture keeping everything together and retaining your flexibility and, however you want to look at it for the next 2 to 3 years. And that's great. But what is your end goal? If this is just a feel-good season and you're happy with just getting back to the playoffs and winning a series maybe, then tip your hat. But if you're ownership and you're looking at revenue and numbers of what a deep run actually looks like in dollars and cents, and you parlay that to a Rockets team that's always been aggressive in terms of scouring, NBA, other teams, taking calls, incoming calls, outgoing calls, you make a move. And there's so many things that you can do. Now, I'm not saying break the bank and go get De'Aaron Fox, because that's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And I don't think
that was going to be the follow-up.
I was about to ask you, is the guy De'Aaron Fox? He's not a shooter, though. I know what you mean.
He's not a shooter, and I don't think he's an Ime guy in terms of a table setter and a defender that Fred is. And although he is pretty good in the clutch, we've seen he's third or fourth in fourth quarter points scored.
Yeah.
That would solve a lot of issues for them, but it also caused a lot of other problems. Right. So it's a pick your poison type of thing.
Then who, Kelly? I mean, pie in the sky, Kelly Iko, you get to make it happen, to make this team an actual title contender. Who's the guy?
And this I might be the only person that thinks like this, and this is a domino effect in the event that De'Aaron Fox leaves, goes to San Antonio or wherever. I think they should make a call to DeMar DeRozan. I think now he's not the floor spacer that you probably want,
right?
And there are probably maybe better options out there. But if you're talking about half court proficiency, you're talking about fourth quarter dominance, if you're talking about leadership, if you're talking about someone who knows how to end a game, DeMar is right there.
Fred and DeMar back on the same team would be funny. That would,
and it might not cost you a lot. It might not cost you a lot.
Yeah,
it might not cost you a lot.
All right.
I'm pretty sure there are better options out there. Like maybe go get you make a call about Herb Jones or Trey Murphy or one of those 3-and-D guys.
I would definitely call about Herb Jones. I mean, just personally, I would make a call about Herb Jones if he's available.
But if you watch them, if you watch them, it's like their issue. Sometimes it actually is their ball penetration at times.
Yeah.
Like if teams want to wall up him in and he doesn't have the ball handling yet to break that down for a secondary move.
Right.
Then looking at Jalen still has to bulk up. And we saw today, whenever he tried to go left, Jalen Wells was on his hip.
Yep.
Like it's difficult. So you need a guy that's savvy that can get in between the lines and who's kind of an unorthodox player. DeMar has been that for years.
Yeah.
And I think, on paper, it's not the sexiest fit because Herb Jones is probably a cleaner analytical fit. But, it's worth the shot.
You need the guy, Kelly.
Yeah, you need the guy.
The story of this season for the Rockets
Butler.
And the fourth quarter. The personality does matter. But this is the thing about this team is that that's the piece they're missing. They're missing the guy. They've got 10, 15 guys who can run through a brick wall. They don't have the guy that can settle them down at the end of games, take the big shots, put everybody where they need to be. And again, Kelly, I know we keep you busy. We keep you up late. We're going to see you next week. Trade deadline, live stream. All right. Kelly's going to be there.
Can't get enough of the Rockets, man.
That's right. Can't get enough Kelly Eco.
Right.
Guys, go and read him over at The Athletic. Thank you, Kelly, for hanging out with us. For Es Baraheni, for Kelly Eco, for Kyle Neubeck, thanks for stopping by. I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.